Hey folks, we're going to look at flight navigation and planning starting with ILS radio navigation. So you should have this noted down in your engineering notebook and get ready to learn some exciting stuff. So let's start out with what is an ILS? So you see the little pencil icon, you should note this down. It stands for Instrument Landing System. And what it does is it is a system that will help you be able to land appropriately onto a runway. So it aligns the aircraft along the runway's extended center line if you're viewing it from above. So we have a center line of a runway, and it helps us keep lined up with that left and right. You also have something that is a glide slope. The glide slope is the up and down, and that keeps you lined up along this nice line right here, and then you can land directly so that you're not descending too quickly or you're not descending too slowly. So the ILS instrument landing system helps you align your aircraft left to right and top to bottom so that you can line your aircraft up and land very nice and smooth. So these are two things that I want you to note in your engineering notebook. And once you do that, go ahead and move on. So, an instrument landing system is just a navigational aid to guide the aircraft to the runway. It uses these transmitters. It also uses some approach lights. And so you have these things called VAS lights that will light up and give you indication. But essentially, our goal is to line up. You can see this big green cross. Our goal is to stay sort of in the middle of this. And that's what these instrument landing system will help us to do. If we're too far to the left, it tells you to go right. If it's too far to the right, it tells you to go left, and so on. So, how exactly does that work? Well, it uses this type of indicator, and there is a little needle in here that starts to swing in one direction. And you also have indicators on the side that tell you if you need to go up or down. Now, different indicators and instruments will look a little differently. So, let's take a look at a couple of those. Your glide slope indications. So, you'll note that I want you to make a note of this. You can draw out this image. This shows your runway. Um, Situation B shows that you are perfectly centered on that glide slope. A says that you are too high and you need to descend. You need to go down. And if you need to go down, our glide slope indication will tell you that. It tells you where you need to go. So that's an important piece. Your indicators will always tell you where you need to go. They don't tell you where you are necessarily, they tell you where you need to be. So you can see on this one, the glide slope indicator is this little yellow arrow-ish thing here. And normally, if you're where you need to be, it's going to be right in the middle. But right now, it's down below center, so it says you need to descend. This one here is a little bit more common in the aircraft that we're going to be taking a look at anyway. And this has a center line needle that once you tune it into the glide slope frequency, then that needle will pivot. And right now, it's pivoting down. You can see it's kind of at a diagonal downwards. That says you need to go down, you need to descend, you need to drop altitude. Whereas if you look at C, we are too low in altitude, so that needle is pivoting upwards. It's saying you need to gain altitude. Well, typically we don't gain altitude. We would well, you might have to, but normally if you just fly straight and level, watch my little mouse here, eventually you get to that glide slope and it's in a perfect position, and then you can follow it down. So if it ever says that you're a little bit high, depending on what altitude you need to maintain to hit that runway, you just continue flying straight and level until that needle drops down to a horizontal, and then you can begin to descend and try to keep it horizontal. Actually, let me show you one more thing here. You can see on this particular indicator, that little yellow arrow is above center line. That just shows that you are above, or you are below the glide slope and you need to go up. But again, we typically don't gain altitude. We would just fly straight and level until we hit that glide slope, assuming we're at the appropriate altitude, and then we descend along that B line right there, that center line. The localizer is a left to right indication. So now we're not looking at this horizontal line right here. You can see that horizontal line is right in the middle. So that's showing that we have the appropriate altitude. We're right along that glide slope. And now we're looking at the localizer. Localizer is left to right. So if you want to make a note of that, your localizer indication, you can draw this picture out. We have three different scenarios. Scenario A is we are too far to the left. So if you're too far to the left, the indicator should say you need to go right. So this one here, that big yellow bar, is shifted to the right. It's telling you you need to go right a little bit. So we need to adjust our heading and swing our aircraft to the right. You can see this one here, it's a needle that is pivoted to the right. It's swinging to the right. like a pendulum a little bit that says we need to go right. Situation B, it's lined up perfectly in the center in both of these. This little bar is in the middle. We haven't swung our indicator needle at all, so we're perfectly lined up on this localizer. And then situation C, we are too far to the right, so it's swinging to the left. So you can note those three situations down, and you'll get a chance to practice these in the flight simulator using a localizer and glide slope. So to check for understanding, what would your glide slope indicator look like if the airplane is above the glide path? So your airplane is way up here, and this, again, reminder, this is telling you where you need to go. It's not telling you where you are, it's telling you where you need to go. So if you are above, which situation would this be? Go ahead and select that now. All right, and I hope you chose C. It's you are too high, so it will say you need to descend, you need to go down. And since the glide slope is also descending, you would probably need to throttle back, reduce your throttle so that your plane begins to descend. Of course, you don't want to stall, but you're going to practice all those things. What about this situation? So right now our aircraft is over here. It is too far to the right of this runway. And typically these localizers use different frequencies to control these instruments. But I just need you to pick out which localizer we would use on this one. Or what would it show? Would it show A, B, or C? If you are too far to the right, it's going to show you where you need to go. So go ahead and choose that now. And I hope you chose A because you are too far to the right. You need to swing left. All right, this is just a couple images of what some of the antenna would look like, a localizer centerline antenna and then a glide slope antenna. This is an ILS approach plate example. You can look these up online. This is one for Rocky Mountain Metro. It's runway 30R, and the airport code is BJCs. That we'll actually use KBJC when we do it on our flight sim. And if you are going to navigate to this, you're going to have a little radio station, and that will tune in your indicator needles so that they actually start operating using these signals. So I want you to look right here. We have this little hexagon symbol right here, and there's a box around it. That is Jeffco's um, VOR approach, and you can see it says 115.4. That is your what the station that you're going to tune into. So 115.4 megahertz. It is on a radial of 295. So if you can recall, we have a compass here that is 360 degrees, and so if you have a heading of 360, that would be north. There's always going to be a slight deviation because it's magnetic north, but we'll just for simplicity's sake, we'll just pretend it's straight up. It's north. East would be a heading of 90 degrees, which we say 090. South is 180. West is 270. So 295 is a little bit northwest, and that's the radial that we would call this. We would actually call that a bearing if we're going towards this. So we are heading in a bearing of 295. That would be going towards this runway. And you can see this little arrow here. That is actually the localizer. That is not the runway. The runway is this little tiny thing here. But this is as far out as that localizer will reach for your equipment. And you also have an ILS approach, which is going to give us our glide slope. And that is going to be a 111.7 on our little radio station. So you will do that on the simulator. You'll have to tune to that station, and that will give you your vertical glide slope. So you can see your left to right. We have this indication. If your airplane is over here, right where my little mouse pointer is, then it's going to say you need to go left. And then we kind of swing left until we get onto that 295. Now you look down here, this is your glide slope. Your glide slope, says you need to maintain 7,000 feet until you hit the outer marker. And that outer marker is right here. So you're going to hit a heading of 295 at 7,000 feet. And then that glide slope indicator at first is going to say you need to go up because the glide slope is actually up here. And you're going to be at an altitude that's less than that, but you're not going to actually increase altitude. You're going to maintain 7,000 feet until that glide slope shows you're right on that line. And at that point, you need to start descending, because if you don't, you're going to keep going over the top. And now it's going to say, whoa, you really need to descend. And then you're going to be descending too rapidly. So those will be some fun things to practice when you get into the flight sim. But that just gives you a sort of rough idea on how the ILS approach plate works and how you may navigate into those things. So in radio navigation, go ahead and type in, for a quick check for understanding, what does ILS stand for? And it is instrument landing system. Great job. In this situation here, um, which way would the aircraft need to turn to get onto a radial of 300? Again, these numbers here all have an extra zero on them. This is a heading of 300 degrees or 300. They don't add the extra zero because it's just too many numbers on here. So which way would we have to go? We'd have to go left because the arrow is pivoting left. So we'd have to go left. So we would actually have to fly at a heading of maybe 270. And eventually, if we do that long enough, then this needle will swing straight up and down, and then we can go back to 300. More on that in the next lesson. Right here, this one shows you, hey, we're way too high, but that's because we're approaching this glide slope. Then it says, oh, we're getting closer. That little vertical line is getting closer to zero. And then as we hit that perfect glide slope, you can see it's right on, but now you need to start descending. Otherwise, it's going to say that you're actually going to be a little bit too far off in this direction. We would need to go down, so that line is going to drop right here. So I hope that helps a little bit. Get ready for the next one.